Might as well start calling myself Bill O'Reilly, Just doing it live. Here from my garage in Los Angeles. Either way, my name is Ramirez. Welcome. This is FrogBear. This is going to be an installment of Song Study. I think that should do it. I'm also changed my microphone, but a little background on this. Let me just work my camera a bit bigger. This is going to be a song by Prodigy. Prodigy from Mobb Deep. Now, there is something that I want to bring up with playing this song and all this other stuff, is that people think that it's only information, or you know what I mean, like it's only certain documentaries that get shadow banned. It's only certain kind of rhetoric that gets shadow banned. It's only when you question certain things that it gets shadow banned. But I don't think people are ready to fully quantify how much of the internet is being censored. So today's song is going to be a prime example of censorship, but in the weirdest way, because it's music, it's a song. There should be no reason as to why it's shadow banned, but it is. So either way, let me fix my camera, change my audio. Actually, I should show the song too. And okay, yeah. Another thing before I actually start, I wanted to show if you were to copy the name of any other song, let's see if I can find one. Prodigy Firestarter. This is a techno song. So this song should not fall under the category of what I'm about to do, which is I highlighted it, I right click it, and I hit search. Okay, yeah, I was about to be like, this is a techno song. This should not have lyrics, even though it does have lyrics. I just found it very interesting that when I Googled this song, I just highlighted it, right clicked it, hit search Google, and usually this will show up, right? And usually there should be lyrics somewhere around here, but there isn't any. Like, you have to scroll a little bit down, actually look for it, and then find it. Instead of Google doing what it usually does, which is just provide you the lyrics within their own UI, instead of you having to click on, I don't know, I just thought that was interesting. But I have no worries about getting flagged for this song, because I really doubt I would get flagged. So the sample, I'm not too sure where the sample comes from, but it says they are a secret network of international pirates. Now, this refers to maritime law. This refers to the fact that there is jurisdictions of law, and how people can operate amongst that law depends on what jurisdiction you're in, depends on if can you speak the legal language. I think it's called legalese. And how it gets interesting. Either way, keep reading the lyrics. Who identify with no nation, no national flag, and no established religion. And this is something that I always like to say to my friends, or anytime I debate this sort of thing. I always bring up that the people that we're dealing with, the people who are in power, they do not have your best interest in mind. They do not have the citizens' best interest in mind. And they don't care. Like, they don't have the same attachments to life like me or you would, or that anybody else would. You know what I mean? Like, you like grandma because she makes you some certain kind of cookies or some shit, right? But typically what you'll find out with the people who are at the top and make these sorts of decisions, they don't hold the same attachments to just normal things that we do. And I always found it very interesting that people could not quantify the fact that people just don't care. Like, people cannot have a favorite sports teams. People cannot participate in these other things that everybody else participates in and be okay with it. Their flag is the skull and crossbones, and their god, God, spells gold, oil, and drugs. And I think that's more of a tongue-in-cheek representation of the fact that the world revolves around commodities. The world revolves around raw resources. It's kind of why I always bring up the fact that America would not stand if it does not have if it didn't have a hold over all of the resources of the world, and if it didn't manage it the way that it did, none of this would work the way it does. But that's a whole other conversation nobody's willing to have.
You finally found my nigga. And now you found him. Make him fucking talk. Torture him. Make him spill his guts. You got me? Now get the fuck out of here, both of you.
1, 2, alright. Yeah. That's right. Live from the belly. They got me behind the fence. I run shit from the inside. The fucking.
Oh wait, it didn't play the sample. The reason why the sample matters is because it's just like a quibble you'll hear at the beginning of it.
They are a secret network of international pirates who identify with no nation, no national flag, and no established religion. Their flag is the skull and crossbones, and their god, God, spells gold, oil, and drugs.
1, 2, alright.
And I really need to work on the transitioning from saying one thing to another thing. With that, I also kind of want to highlight the fact that in the music video, he shows the police department, and he shows you how there is a 2-tier system where there could be how they go after him, because this is a representation of you know what I mean, like how the system itself has these facilities that could exercise their jurisdiction over people. So essentially, what happened to Kodak Black when he got locked up? What happened to Kanye West when he got locked up? What happens to any artist at a moment's notice when they start saying the things that they shouldn't be saying, when they start doing things that they shouldn't be doing? In his case, he's using the police department, I think, and why? But to move forward with the song, I really like the imagery he uses. Whoever decided to direct this music video did really well. Live from the belly, they got me behind the fence. I run shit from inside of the fucking president. Of the infamous gang, get a whiff of my stank. I got that icky cotton picky shit that got you dazed. I think what I'm just going to highlight here is I run shit from the inside of the fucking president. So that's another reference to how politicians or people in office, like, some of them don't actually matter. In reality, there's somebody behind them giving them orders or telling them how to manage their position. And it isn't that far-fetched to assume that a lot of the decisions a president makes isn't even him, right? That's why he has a cabinet. That's why he has his... he gets to choose who goes into his cabinet, and his cabinet will relate to different parts of the job that relate to the presidency. But in this case, oh yeah, back to Skull and Bones. How they worship a skull and crossbones, which is a reference also to the secret society Skull and Bones, which by and large part comes from the very fact of that secret international piracy organization. He calls them a pirate organization because what he's talking about is the European English sector that was born from. What I tend to believe is that England used piracy and used pirates of back in the day in order to beat the Spanish and beat the French. You can prove this by in large part. But what people don't quantify is that I largely believe England also used piracy to take over all of America, or to get rid of certain populations, because they knew that if they sent normal soldiers or if they sent non-criminals, they wouldn't have the heart to kill, rape, pillage, all these other things. So they specifically used pirates, criminals. That's a whole other conversation that I should not be having here.
Yeah, that's right. Live from the belly. They got me behind the fence. I run shit from the inside. The fucking president of the infamous gang. Get away from my stank. I got that icky cotton picky shit that had you days. I'm a quadruple OG, a old soul. Call me the reincarnation of the pharaoh with a OE.
Damn, I always like the wordplay in this song. I'm a quadruple OGs, or so call me, the reincarnation of a pharaoh with an oldie. That's just making reference to a certain aspect of culture. The barrel full of hot lead, shoot a pothead, talking that shit about hip hop dead. Nah, it's alive behind the gates. And one thing that you'll find with a lot of conscious rap, with a lot of rap that will highlight themes, like, how do I say this? I think one day I could play a clip of a rapper called Tumex. He has an interview with Sam Tripoli where he talks about how he interned for a lot of these major record label companies like Interscope, Def Jam, and from his perspective as an intern, I'm pretty sure there's hundreds of other interns that could speak on this, where there is an agenda, there is a marketing plan, there is to some degree an understanding within the gated walls of the industry. They know what sells and what doesn't sell. They know what would hit and what would not hit. But at the same time, you can make a decision. You could probably find some really good rap that's conscious, but ultimately somebody will make the decision to push that music forward or not to push that music forward. And Tumex in this interview talks about how the industry does not have a vested interest in playing this music. It does not have a vested interest in finding this artistry, finding this message, and promoting it. So that's why he says talking that shit about hip hop dead. Nah, it's alive behind the gates. Permanent smiley face. Any nigga stunting on God. Nah, you out of place.
Barrel full of hot lead, shoot a pothead. Talking that shit about hip hop dead. Now it's live from behind the gate. Permanent smiley face. Any nigga stunning on the guard. Now you out of place.
And he's also a God-fearing man, which is not something that you'll also see as a message being promoted in hip hop. And a lot of people would have their reasons into not believing God, but I don't know, doing research on the occult, doing research on these secret societies has only led me to having a firm belief in God, because when you understand the background of a lot of what they believe, you kind of figure out that they're just playing out a spite. Like, they're playing out spite and vengeance against the Creator for various other reasons. Other occultic circles believe in other things, but the largest one that he talks about in this song are people who really do not have I don't know how to explain this. Very difficult.
I beat a lot of cases, had to take a L. I see you in the hot set, yep, hold it down. Money is worthless, real power is people. Real strength is in the street where everybody's equal.
Like how he also shows himself getting tortured by the cops, right? Like, you probably fall into certain situations where not normal people, like if you know anything, if you saw anything meaningful, like there's also an interview that I recently watched with Immortal Technique, and he talks about how growing up in Harlem where he grew up, he got to see certain things that didn't make sense to him, which as a kid kind of fucked him up, because it's like, yeah, what do you do when you're watching a cop hand over drugs to the gang for them to go sell to their neighborhood, right? Like the people who were the biggest cutters, like, and by cutting I mean they would cut other ingredients into the drug to make more of it. The largest people who did that in the East Coast were the cops themselves, when they were busting down these drug dealers, taking their shit, cutting it, and selling it back to the streets. Like, you can imagine how that fucked up Immortal Technique. You can imagine how that would fuck up anybody living in this area. But it talks about, does it even say it here? Real power is in the people. Yeah, money is worthless. Real power is people. Real strength is in the street where everybody is equal. Fuck jewelry. Fuck rims. Let's spend on our protection. Again, he has another song that no, I think that's an Immortal Technique song where like he's rapping about the Second Amendment and exercising your Second Amendment. Things you do not see in the culture ever, like let alone anybody know any of these songs. But bringing up the fact that there are other things that are more important, but it's also nobody really quantifies the fact that without people there is no power. And then there's this whole notion that what was that the Aleister Crowley saying of you are God, we are God, right? Like in a weird way, when you think about it, like to some degree, somebody else does not become powerful or exercise power unless other people give him power. So in a weird way, like it's that whole loosh stealing, right? You're giving your energy away to something, and they're just taking that loosh. Play the song.
Fuck jury, fuck rims. Let's spend on our protection. Get armor, get cameras. Get with it, little nigga, this man shit. Real power is people. Real strength is in the street where everybody's live from behind the wall. Sitting staring at the wall. I'm fit to pop out this bitch like a newborn. I'm fit to cut out all the smoking and the drinking. The wine and the spirits. It's evil when you think it, baby, so I'm telling.
This is live from behind the wall, sitting, staring at the wall, making reference to just everyone in prison who just has to wait, sit, and waste their time. And like they're just, I don't know, like I grew up, it's not that I grew up under certain, like it's not that I was punished this way, it's just I found myself doing that a lot growing up because I was always with my moms, I was always traveling. So like in some cases I'm just waiting in a room and you're stuck with your thoughts a lot of the time. So I'm like, dude, I would not want to imagine what my mind would do if I got locked up or incarcerated. Just because there's just so much time. Like, what would you... I could see why people just come out fucking cut. I'm fit to cut out all the smoking and drinking. The wine and the spirits is evil when you take it, baby. This is also a reference to how certain people lose themselves to vices. I know he says wine, spirits, smoking, drinking, but in reality, it's whatever vice you give it to. Like, you could be addicted to anything else. You could be addicted to coffee for whatever sakes. But the point that is important is that some people can recognize that they've given themselves all to these vices. Some people can recognize and stop themselves. Other people can't. And very interesting that you just do not hear that message in rap music today, right? Going back to the main message, which is there is a clear promotion, there is a clear marketing scheme that is being laid out for all music in general, and it excludes anything with a positive message. That's usually what I think.
In truth, you live it, then you see it. You breathe it, then you bid. I tell you a little secret, it's a secret. Government that worship an owl. They practice witchcraft to harness their power. Pedophiles rape little kids for energy. It's satanic ritual. WTC, R.I.P. They lit the Pentagon on fire. That's lighting the pentagram on fire.
And that, that's my favorite bar. Where, so I'm telling the truth, you live it, then you see it. You breathe it, then you be it. Which is, I think that's a part of the Hermetic principles. Just because, right, like the law of rhythm, the law of polarity, like you have to understand these vague concepts first, and then you have to apply them to yourself. And I only say this because not that long ago, like I was using the law of polarity because I was going through some things in my mind, and how do I say this? It relates to like trauma healing that I'm doing, and I'm like trying to figure out why I would get pushed to one extreme so much. But in understanding that, you can use the law of polarity, right? If I'm being pushed to this extreme, what is it that I'm lacking? So if you get pushed to hot, you're lacking cold. And kind of, I don't know how, you know what I mean? Degrees and understanding that. How do you go backwards? In a weird way. I don't know how to explain this. This got really weird. You breathe it, then you be. I'll tell you a little secret. It's a secret government that worships an owl. They practice witchcraft to harness their power. So this is kind of where I found myself at one point in time, where I kept looking at common denominators. What were the common themes that I kept seeing get repeated? What were the common things that I could point to that would give me not a bigger understanding, but a wider perspective? Something that would give me more insight on the people that I was dealing with. Because there were certain decisions that didn't make sense to me. There's a lot of things that just don't make sense with a lot of the ideology that the white people say that don't match up with their actions, right? By that I mean, so when I was getting into this whole Trump ideological warfare, one thing that I did not understand was that in the underground, in discords, in voice groups, in these loose places under the veil of society, there was a lot of like white nationalist wingnut idiots. And something that would baffle me that I did not understand was their belief system. And the fact that they could not understand that if they played out their fantasy, it wouldn't go anywhere. They would fall under the same leadership that brought them here to begin with. It would put them under the same leadership that led them to where we're at now, that led them to losing their rights to their children, that led them to losing and letting all of this infrastructure go, all because corporatists and the state kept working together to sell out this country and its resources for their own gain. And then I would have to jump hoops and them say that the system loves me. The system loves me. And for me to only point out, well, your medical industry is killing you. Your food industry is killing you. How does the system love you if it's entirely designed in your right? The system is entirely designed to eradicate whoever uses the system, right? From our food to our water to everything. You get poisoned. So I found myself kind of looking at these people like, whoa, y'all are suffering some form of psychosis. Like, you don't understand that. But the system loves me, right? While the system's just bleeding them dry, right? Taking their kids, drugging everybody, putting the women through all sorts of traumatic cycles in life. Crazy shit, right? So, and then it says, pedophiles grape little kids for energy. What? Like, right? I can unravel that secret for you. It talks about human trafficking. It's the fact that there is this other veil of the upper echelons that likes to indulge themselves in these activities, but you wouldn't know about that. And the only way that we got that exposed was through WikiLeaks, was Julian Assange, was the original hackers and journalists that were actively trying to do something into figuring out why Homeland Department in general tried to stop the Hillary Clinton investigation for Haiti. There is so much that this is kind of why I wanted to pick the song, because in order to explain this one bar, like, you have to understand how we got here, right? But this song came out in 2008. Oh man, sorry, that took me back. The song came out in 2008, right? None of this WikiLeaks stuff, none of this Pizzagate stuff, none of this conspiracy stuff really took off until 2015. None of it took off until 2015. None of it really took off until Seth Rich and the Democrat emails. None of this really took off until the Trump presidency. So I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, right, there's this one song that gets shadow banned out of existence, Prodigy himself, right? Because, if you type in the word Prodigy by itself, you'll get the techno band, not the rapper from Mobb Deep. Either way, they practice witchcraft to harness their power. Pedos grape little kids for energy. Maria Abramovich, look into her family, look into the Kardashians and why they're rumored to be witches. Look into the history of witchcraft in general. You'll find out that it's called the royal arts. You'll eventually find out that there's been a monopoly over the understanding of all of that bullshit. I don't know. I kept doing research on these things, and I kept doing research on the people that kept making these actions and doing this shit, and kept finding that they all had a consistent background. They all had a consistent belief system that transcended religion, that transcended nations, that transcended... I don't know. I want to listen to that. I want to listen to that bar again.
Gone on the satanic harness, they power it. Everything you see in the spirits is evil when you think it, baby. So I'm telling the truth. You live it, then you see it. You breathe it, then you bid. I tell you, little secret, it's a secret. Government that worship an owl. They practice witchcraft to harness their power. Pedophiles rape little kids for energy. It's satanic ritual. WTC.
And he talks about how the World Trade Center was a ritual. And the reason why you can assume a ritual is because if you do this, anybody can do this. If you do any meaningful research into witchcraft, or at least what's practiced in modern times and what is considered witchcraft, if you dig further deeper into it, if you actually look for the people who took the initial magic systems and reiterated them to modernize them, you'll typically find out that these are actual things that are practiced, right? When he says,
they lit the Pentagon on fire. That's lighting the pentagram on fire.
In any witchcraft or in any spellcraft, there needs to be a pentagram that's lit on fire, and in which direction it's pointed in means something. One points to the heaven, one points to down below, right? As above, so below. That's a common phrase. But in lighting the pentagram, right, in lighting it on fire, it's essentially you burning the ethereal energy and allowing it to flow in whatever direction it was going in. But when you add the other layer of the fact that the only office that suffered damage for this fire was the office doing the investigation on the $2.3 trillion that were missing. And by the way, Building 6, there's that whole other thing when you get into the numerology aspect of it, when you start breaking down the fact that there are these people would like to call them coincidences, but again, you get into the nature of statistical improbabilities. What is the probability that TV shows, magazines, art, comic books, what is the statistical probability that all of these mediums and all of these formats had references to a 9/11 event even before any of this would happen, right? And then there's I think it's a Biggie. I think it's a Biggie song where he says, blow up like the World Trade or some shit like that. But he's making a reference to the fact that the World Trade Center had already suffered previous terrorist attacks. So how does it make sense that Rudy Giuliani then decides to put an anti-terrorist force inside of that same building that suffered a terrorist attack? Right? Like, I'm thinking about this logistically. What are the statistical anomalies here? And how much do I have to suspend disbelief in order for me to entertain any of this bullshit? You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck? Either way, all these bodies for what? So you could scare everybody into one world, huh? Hold on.
All these bodies for what? So you can scare everybody into one world, huh? All my crimes is on deck. So if you ain't come for a war, then run. Money is worthless, real power is people. Real strength is in the street where everybody's equal. Fuck jury, fuck rims. Let's spend on our protection. Get armor, get cameras.
Right? And then what I really like about this instance of him showing himself in the chair and him getting injected, that is I don't know. Some people assume that we know as citizenry that we know everything that could be done to the human mind. And I'm like, fuck no. If you've never been to a psychiatric ward, if you've never seen the treatment that these people get, if you've never looked at the early history of psychiatry, psychology, if you don't look at the history of human experiments, people have lost their mind if they think that interrogation is anything nice and proper or modern. But what else was I gonna bring up with that? MK Ultra, with the fact that like there are rumors when rappers go into, right, when a rapper gets pulled into the pen or this or that and he comes out looking completely different, like there are always rumors of what happened to him. Was he switched out? Like, did he not play ball? Did they have to find another doppelganger and kind of like give him cosmetic surgery? Because there are instances of that happening. And then people would go into, but how would they even make one person look like another person? And I'm like, modern plastic surgery has gone to such degrees that it all depends. Do you have the money to pay for it? That's what it always comes down to. Do you have the money to pay for it? Do you have the skilled hands that could do it? And usually a lot of the skilled hands that could do any of this work are monitored, maintained, and known by the CIA or any other form of intelligence. Because you have to understand that nations already do this thinking for themselves. Because what, you think Xi Jinping isn't going to have body doubles? You think any of these world leaders are not going to have body doubles? Well, if they're going to have body doubles, who's going to make that other double look like them? Because they find people that look as close enough as possible, but it doesn't fulfill or facilitate the extra need for that. So they need to go the extra length with plastic surgery or with whatever form of that needs to be done in order to make sure that body double looks like that other person. And then that other body double has to go through rigorous training into learning that person's mannerisms, the way they talk, the way they act, the way they walk. You know what I mean? Like, think about this. Intelligence offices, Homeland Security offices already do this thinking. It should be a consistent form factor in people's thinking. But, you know, torture, interrogation, I don't know how I got there. All these bodies for what? So they could scare everybody into one world, huh? Nah, I think largely the 9/11, or at least the Twin Towers, were to hide the fact that the money was going to go missing. They knew that event had to happen regardless, because the way I see it, it's the same reason why the Franco-Syrian War didn't lead anywhere meaningful. They were just going to drag this Western world into a war with the Middle East to destroy it. It's usually what every empire does at the end of its life cycle. They start a war with the Middle East. They expand all their resources, and while all that is happening, these occultic secret societies, lobbyist groups, special interest oligarchs, all of these people will start planning the demise of the country internally. And they're doing this to the Western world. When you look at Europe and the displacement of men from the Middle East and Africa into Europe, and how all that is playing out now, and then you're looking at the caravan situation here with Latin Americans. And by Latin Americans, I'm talking about the real stupid ones. No offense, El Salvadorians, everybody else that came from the caravan below Mexico, because let's be honest, Mexicans don't even like you. I'm just saying, there's racism between the Latin races. What the fuck you expect? So, scaring the world into one government, huh? Nah. They've already, since Bretton Woods, since the establishment of the economic financial systems, that's already been controlled, in my opinion. Most people won't say that. Is there anything else to the song?
Yo, nigga, this man shit. Real power is people. Real strength is in the street where everybody's equal.
And, you know, nobody will actually talk about rap artists like this or songs like this. So even if this video does get flagged, I'm not going to give a fuck. I'm a big fan of Joe the Engineer. If anybody doesn't know who Joe the Engineer is, he's basically Prodigy's engineer. He helped write the Prodigy's last, I think it was his last project, Hegelian Dialect. Absolutely a great album. Like, one of my favorite songs is called Spiritual Warfare. Actually, that whole album is just fucking fire. Like, but he's somebody who understands. I'm constantly looking for people who understand what I think about, and I always found it fucking hilarious that, like, the very few people that I could find that actually know the subject matter is like KRS-One, Immortal Technique, Prodigy, and there's just a lackluster amount of people who speak on this sort of subject, and there's a good reason for it. Well, it's not a good reason. It's just that the reason for it is that they can't piss off the oligarchs. They can't piss off the special interest groups, and everybody has to maintain the lie. Everybody has to patronize towards and assist towards this truth. In Hegelian Dialect, the one song that I can't remember off the top of my head was, he has a sample of that same woman that says that every imperialist empire needs to rewrite history. Every imperialist empire must have, like, that repeated in order for it to become true. And it reminds me of the war that Istanbul has occurred. The history of Istanbul is actually pretty fantastic. Everybody should look at it, because it's switched over many hands. It's fallen to many different cultures, to many different people, right? And by that I mean, like, they've had actual different groups of people live there. At one point in time, there were Romans there. At another point in time, there were Italians there. At another point in time, it was a different Muslim group that was there. But because so many types of people have seen it, a lot of different architecture exists there in Istanbul. And where's I going with this? Oh yeah, and each time that it switched over hands, the people who live there believed themselves that they were ancient Romans, or that they themselves were ancient this and that, just because they were from that region. But in reality, that city has turned over so many hands that people aren't aware that, like, yeah, your ancestors are from here, but in reality, your ancestors were displaced here at some point in time. When in reality, right? If you're from Istanbul, there's this whole thing of like, oh, I'm the Roman Empire, or this or that. Like there was a turning over of hands and the lineage that came with it, which is why I think it's hilarious that Jesus is white, because it's just like that's not how it works, my guy. You know what I mean? Like the Muslims and the Jews have a really good recorded list of who was who and who was related to who. So how's that work out? But you know, looking at the history of things, not many people do. I'm gonna listen to Hygenian Dialect again and continue working on my drawing, unless I think of another video to do. I'm Ramirez, and this was another episode of Song Study.